Good afternoon. Hello. This is your CJ Divine Martino of Magic 95.5 and Radio One. Welcome to our very necessary forum. As you know, a lot is going on. And yesterday we lived through a day like no other in American history. Okay. We are writing in the history books right now. Domestic terrorists attacked our capital in an effort to derail the process by which we confirm the next president. All of us are shocked. We watched this in awe as this assault went down, especially in the midst of a pandemic that has devastated our families and our economy. And that's why we at Radio One jumped at the chance to once again partner with the president of the Columbus Urban League, Stephanie Hightower. Welcome once again, and thank you so much for sponsoring this forum.
Thank you, Divine. Thank you for Radio One again and Magic 95 for being such a great communications partner, especially for the Black community here in Columbus and Franklin County.
That is our honor. Can you tell everybody once again, like, what is the purpose of this forum today? What are we doing here? What are we addressing?
Well, yesterday's events, they raised special concerns we felt for African Americans in this community. And we know that once again, we find ourselves and our community disproportionately negatively impacted by national events and decisions that are made. And all of us watched in horror yesterday in disbelief at the assault on democracy. It once again to our community, folks are saying this is why we don't participate in the process. We all know that Black and brown people, if they had been on those Capitol steps, or if Muslims had been there on those steps, that the way the situation was handled would not have been the way it was handled with those folks who are primarily from the majority community. And yes, unfortunately, there were 4 people who died yesterday, but we know if those were Black and brown people, it would have been worse. And so we did have some incidences yesterday here in Columbus at the State House lawn, as well as on 270 with those Trump supporters. And so we know that Black people are anxious and they're wary. And we want to make sure that they know that their community, they will be protected. And so that's why we thought it was important to have some of our activists in town on the line today or on this program. Our mayor, our city council president, our new president of the county commissioners, to talk to our folks, to let them know that basically they got their backs, right? And this is not our fight in the Black community, but we need to know that we're going to be safe. And in light of the other things that have been happening, Andre Hill and Casey Goodson, folks need to know that they're going to be safe and protected in this community.
Absolutely. And that is the reason that we placed this forum together today. And we've invited some of the key leaders in the community. We're going to start off with John Gregory. He's actually the CEO of National Center for Urban Solutions. Welcome, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, John. So, John, you and I participate with a group called the Equity Now Coalition, and it's a group of about 150 African American leaders. And we have been paying attention since last March with the pandemic, educating our community. Tell us why you thought it was important that we have this forum today, especially for Black men. You're the founder of the African American Male Wellness Walk. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of why we need to have this forum today.
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. One, I think that this event shows the involvement of African Americans. Getting involved in the political process was very important, and it did bring about change. It brought about change in Georgia, and it brought about change in DC. But the other thing is, I think what you said was very important, and I thank you for being the leader and taking the leadership in our community, is that this is not our fight. Mm-hmm. Our fight is not the fight with the good boys, the bad boys, or whoever they're called. And so what we should do is make sure that we don't infuse ourselves into their issue. They feel like white supremacy is what Donald Trump was supporting. They thought this is their country, but as it becomes local, like people throwing rocks off the freeway or whatever they determine to do, we don't have to infuse ourselves in that and defending that position. We should make sure that we are safe, that we are not making sure that that becomes our issue, because our issue is the African American community and the things that we're doing to make the community better. And so I thought it was important so that they would know that you, I, other leaders in the community, the mayor, and what have you, understand that we're in a very sensitive time. And the other piece is let them know that we should know we're not going to get treated the same way. So let's not infuse ourselves in something that we know is going to be unfair.
Well, let me ask this, Mr. Gregory. A lot of people have the same sentiments as in saying, this is not our fight, basically stay out of it. But what can we do in the Black community to prepare ourselves as the situation is going on? Because if it is ongoing, eventually it will affect us. What can we do in the meantime to get ourselves together?
I think the couple of things that we can do is one, like I said, be conscious of where you're going, what you're doing, and make sure you stay safe, and don't find yourself in the midst of a place that you know that may not be safe for you. The second thing is, I think that we need to continue to do what Stephanie is pushing, is that we need to continue to organize our communities for the purpose of developing leadership and camaraderie and cohesiveness, so that we can become protectors of our neighborhoods.
Thank you, John. And are there any other concerns that you're hearing, out in the community right now that you would just like to talk about, or that people need to be, conscious of?
Yeah, I just want people to understand is that with all the sensitivity of the stuff that's going on, I was at the barbershop the other day, and the brothers in the barbershop were saying, I feel like I want to go over to some people's houses. And I want to say again to African-American men, number one, we're not going to get treated the same. And number two, let's don't make this our personal fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, John, for, sharing that. Also, you want to talk about the mental health hotline, John, for African-American men?
Yeah, we have a program called Real Talk, Real Men, because what we know is that mental health is a big issue, particularly in the African-American community. And so on a monthly basis, twice a month, we have virtual calls that African-American men can come and join in. But we also say that, and we saw on a billboard, if you are a Black male and you're having some mental health issues, that you can call this hotline and we can get you help. The number is 1-800-222-6048. And we have professional people waiting to answer. And being in mental health doesn't mean you have to be crazy. It means that sometimes you just need to talk to somebody.
All right, John, thank you. Real Talk for Black men. That is a great opportunity, because you're right. We do have mental health issues. We are exhausted.
Absolutely.
We are weary about everything that's been going on since these disparities have erupted and been illuminated because of COVID, and then George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. So thank you, John, for sharing that information and those words of wisdom for us. So who do we have up next, Divine?
I believe we are going to speak with the gentleman that calls into my show weekly, and he's very real. He gives it to us basically how I ask. And we're going to welcome Mayor Ginther to the show. Mayor Ginther, welcome.
Thanks, Divine. Great to be with you and Stephanie, and especially in times like this to bring some straight open talk and some clarity to some very uncertain and dangerous and scary times.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. We really appreciate the leadership, your leadership, especially over the last couple of months. We know that there were some protesters in front of the State House, State Capitol building yesterday. And we don't know if we are anticipating additional kinds of activities going on. So, what is the city doing to prepare for those kinds of circumstances if they happen to, come up again?
Well, obviously, we've learned a lot because we made mistakes. I made mistakes. We all made mistakes in how we were dealing with overwhelmingly peaceful protesters in May of June of last year. And so we're taking stock of what we learned there. I'll tell you, I'll be straight up with you. I saw the very clear difference in the way law enforcement interacted with not protesters. These people yesterday in DC were not protesters. They were leading an insurrection. They were a violent mob that were putting law enforcement officers, our congresswomen, our senators, and their staffs at risk. The custodians, the folks that make that Capitol run every day, were at risk. And the way that these folks were handled and dealt with versus the way that protesters in this community and communities around the country were dealt with, very clear differences. I think it gets to the point of what John was making. We got to understand what we're seeing here and what we know to be true. And so, we're going to continue to be thoughtful. We want to encourage peaceful protests, but we also are changing the way we interact from a law enforcement perspective in our initiatives and strategies. And I hope the people of Columbus have seen those changes that we've made since those initial first 2 weeks in May and June, and even some of the more recent protests and demonstrations here in the weeks recent to us.
Absolutely, Mayor Ginther. Yes, what we saw yesterday was very disturbing. Okay. And, another aspect of that was disturbing that people are talking about is the video footage that's going around that showed some people that were in the mob that was doing the attacking. They actually were taking selfies along with some of the police, the Capitol Police. How do you read this? And what do you think it means to the issues of trust between community and police? Because that wasn't a good look.
No, I think you make a great point. There were so many images, videos, actions from yesterday that were disturbing, but I think it really reinforces clearly the disparities in the way that folks feel and see and experience the interactions with law enforcement. We need to acknowledge that exists. It's right there in our faces. And if you put things side by side, there are clear disparities. And that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable in the U.S. Capitol. It's not acceptable in the streets of Columbus. And we need to acknowledge that, but that's not enough. We've got to own the remedy. Mm-hmm. If you just acknowledge something and don't do anything about it, that's a cop-out. We need to acknowledge it and own the remedy to address these disparities and to build trust and confidence and try to restore trust and confidence with law enforcement, with the community.
So we also have City Council President Shannon Hardin, and he is your partner, Mayor Ginther, in this. President Hardin, talk to us a little bit about, I know you guys are working, as the mayor said, on addressing safety issues. What would be your message to our community, and not really just the Black community, but our community as the city council president, about safety, about what's going on, and how we can be a great community?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Divine, and certainly to my partner, my friend, the mayor. We spoke several times yesterday. We were on the phone with the police chief, and my council members, talking about how we keep our community safe. But we have to be very clear about what happened yesterday. We had the sitting president of the United States of America incite a coup attempt to halt peaceful transfer of power. We all know that President-elect Biden won this election. And it's time for all of us, because, yesterday I was saying, Republicans need to acknowledge that he's our president. We're dealing with an American issue right now, where our basic tenets of democracy, that our vote counts, our vote matters, is being questioned. Not even questioned. Question, I guess, is one thing. Question is part of a democracy, but to physically, to violently attack the place where we go for public discourse was unacceptable. And we all know on this call that if the folks look like you and I, it would have been handled differently. One thing that I think about is, and I'm speaking as an African American, we've already leveled where we are on this democracy, what side we are on democracy. We fought for the right to vote. We fought for the right to vote. What we saw yesterday were people who don't want democracy, who don't like democracy, who don't like folks having their will be done at the ballot box. And so, we have to stay vigilant. We have to, as a community, come together. We are going to have an inauguration in 13 days. It will be a peaceful transfer of power. And in Columbus, we will be a part of moving our community forward. We're working on our own issues here in terms of creating that trust amongst police and community. It is hard work. It is not new work. A lot of the issues that we saw, the visible difference, the disparity the mayor talked about, it's racism. And racism is 400 years old in this country. And what I am confident in, and what encourages me, is that we have leadership, we have community, we have people like you, Stephanie, who will bring us together so that we can move forward together and address the issue. I hope yesterday, and I told the mayor this last night, I hope yesterday was rock bottom. Because sometimes you need the clarity. Sometimes you need to see it and have it smack dead in your face of what we're dealing with. There was some clarity in terms of disparities amongst how Black and white folks are dealt with when engaging with law enforcement, and not just law enforcement. This is bigger than just even law enforcement. This was an attack on our democracy. And I'll say this: it is not safe to have Donald Trump in the White House for another 13 days. I think that there are mental issues. There are issues that are going on. And I think that this is the moment where we need the 25th Amendment. It was created for a reason, to keep us all safe, and not in hope that our leaders in DC are up to the challenge of dealing with this unparalleled and unprecedented time in American history. But I'm proud to be from an American. I'm proud to be here in Columbus. And I know that we have the stock, we have the ability, and we are going to move forward here in Columbus.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Hart. To piggyback off of what you said, as far as us having our own issues to deal with here as well in Ohio, and this is something that Mayor Ginther and I spoke of today on my show. So this question is posed to the both of you. We do have issues that we are dealing with right here in Ohio, including gun laws. And as you both know, Governor Mike DeWine passed a gun law, an extension on the Stand Your Ground bill, which does allow you to be able to shoot someone in self-defense, even when you're not in your home or your vehicle. You don't have to actually try to retreat before you take this lethal action, which we all feel is not very good for Black or brown people, and especially with the violence that's going on right now. What is your opinion? How do you feel about this law being passed, and what do you foresee the outcome being?
Well, Divine, we talked about this today, and I feel very strongly and passionately about this. The governor is a good and decent man, but he is dead wrong on this issue. And proliferation of guns, in addition to many other things, have led to record levels of violence, youth violence. It is easier to access a firearm in the streets of Columbus and in communities across this country than it is to access a job and employment and opportunities for growth and prosperity. That is wrong. More guns on the street and empowering vigilantes to deliver their own justice. Well, we've seen that story before. We know how that plays out. And Black and brown people are disproportionately negatively impacted when people are armed up and taking matters into their own hands. And this is a very dangerous step, bad public policy that will make all of us, particularly our Black and brown neighbors, less safe.
I couldn't agree with the mayor more. This is a shoot first, ask questions policy that will lead to the death of African-American men. Folks, it's about, when you feel fearful, we already understand that part of racism is being fearful of Black people, and especially Black men. This shoot first, ask questions later policy is not safe for anyone. It's not safe for anyone. And it's really an insult to cities, to cities in Ohio. Time and time again, I've worked with the mayor to go to the State House and talk about just keeping our city safe around gun laws. And time again, they slap our hands down and say, no, you can't even create laws in your own city that would keep folks safe and keep guns out of the hands of folks that don't need them. And then on top of that, that's one thing. But then on top of that, to say, but we're going to open the doors to this new shoot first, ask questions later policy is absolutely unacceptable. I am beyond disappointed in the governor. Disappointed is a very kind word right now for this, because I think it is a safety issue. I think it's a political issue too. He bowed to the pressure of extremists in his party, and we got bad policy.
I think the council president hit it right on the head. If legislators and state leaders don't have the guts to take on the NRA, don't have the decency to work in a bipartisan way on common sense gun safety laws that overwhelming majorities of people support, then they at least need to get out of our way, so that we can put in place an assault weapons ban. We can put red flag laws in place to make sure that guns don't end up in the hands of dangerous people who abuse their family members or their neighbors, and universal background checks. We know those things work, and you look in communities and states around the country that have those things in place. Go check out Boston. Go check out Massachusetts. They don't have the proliferation of guns and gun violence that we're seeing in places around the country. And so get out of our way so we can lead if you don't have the courage to do so.
I think that's just spot on, Mayor Ginther. And, I want to go back, before, I know you guys have busy schedules and trying to make sure that our city is safe and being governed appropriately. I want to go back to the issue of trust, because that was one of the things that we really wanted to underscore during this call today. And so I know there are going to be strategies that you're working on to rebuild trust. Can you talk a little bit about what we are going to be doing in the near future to make sure that our community really trusts law enforcement and we can rebuild some of that lost trust that has happened over the last couple of months because of some of the untimely issues that we've been dealing with over the last couple of months?
Well, I appreciate that question and the opportunity to share a little bit about what President Hardin and I have been working so hard on, and that the people have been engaged in, whether it was the Safety Advisory Commission, the Civilian Reviewed Working Group. We had our neighbors step up that have put in significant amounts of time and energy. And then ultimately, every voter in the city of Columbus had an opportunity to weigh in on police reform for the first time in our city's history, where 75%. When was the last time any issue got 75% of the vote? 75% of the voters supported issue 2, establishing a civilian review board and the role of an inspector general with subpoena power to conduct independent investigations of police misconduct. We're at the table now with the FOP, and we are going to negotiate because we know our neighbors' lives depend on it. And we are going to the table with the vote of the people. We know this is going to be a long process, but we're asking people who may be interested in serving on the Civilian Review Board to apply. They can go to columbus.gov/Civilian Review Board work group, where they can apply. That deadline is January 15th. So it's timely, and want people to go check that out and apply if they're interested, so we can have a great, strong, robust group that's going to help us lead this reform.
Mayor Ginther, President Hardin, are there any certain criteria that community members need to have in order to apply to be on this? Because I was glad, that's what I was hoping you were going to talk about. This is a really important step. And we want to make sure that you have a robust group of people to choose from. So any certain qualifications, what do people need to know? Because I know a lot of people are going to be afraid, well, maybe I don't fit the criteria.
President Hardin, you want to take a crack at it?
Sure. So we're really appreciative of the Civilian Review Working Group that put together the recommendations that the mayor and I accepted in terms of qualifications. One of the things that they were very specific on was that that there wouldn't be people excluded from who can serve. And we won't say we're going to hold a seat for X either. And so we're encouraging folks that are residents that represent a diverse background of Columbus who care about building trust and accountability, who understand that Columbus has good officers, but that we have to do a better job of policing, that we have to hold people accountable. It all comes back to that trust question. For us to have the trust in our good policing, we have to know that there is accountability and that there is oversight. And so we look forward to working with this group, working with the mayor to seek the group. I think the mayor talked about the application period coming up shortly. And then we look forward to seeking this group and allowing them to get to work.
I think President Hardin hit it right as well. We do want the majority of the Civilian Review Board for folks to live inside the city. So for folks that live outside the city, they're certainly welcome to apply, but we're going to be very purposeful and intentional, making sure a majority of this board lives in our community. As the council president said, we want folks to be fair and impartial. But we also want them to be committed to justice and reform and have the courage to make some tough decisions, but in a fair and impartial way.
Can I just add one more other thing that the city is doing? Working with Columbus City Council, we are in the middle of our reimagining public safety process. And so we have a series of community engagement opportunities starting next week. I think the 13th and the 14th, we have 2 different hearings. People are we're doing surveys. We need to continue to hear from the public, because what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody, regardless of your zip code, what side of the city you live on, and certainly the color of your skin, you feel safe in Columbus. And we need to be a part of that process. So we launched a survey that you can find on our website at columbus.gov/City Council, where you can take a survey to tell us specifically how you view public safety. And what that means, I got word yesterday that over 1,000 people in I think 4 days have already taken the survey. That will instruct how this council, and we work with the mayor about how we create the policies and the budgets that support keeping each and every one of us safe.
That's a very good point, President Hardin. I'm going to piggyback off of you once again, speaking of safety, because safety is a big concern right now. We have had 8 homicides in the first 6 days of 2021. We had a very deadly year last year. 2020 was a high rate of homicide, I believe 175 people. What would be your advice right now for people in the community to stay safe during this time, especially with tensions and emotions being on a high?
You know, I think it's really important that we understand that the violence we're seeing, there isn't any one reason. I know a lot of people in the press and even some people in the community, what are you doing? Well, how are you going to change this? We got to understand that we have, an issue in our community right now where you have this public health crisis, this pandemic that's led to an economic crisis for a lot of our families who are feeling a squeeze that they've never felt before, that there is, a human service crisis with food and housing insecurity that's going on in our community. And the fact that our young people, the overwhelming majority of our young people, still haven't been in a classroom since last March. No extracurricular activity. Summer programming was a shell of its former self. There is a sense of desperation, of frustration, lack of seeing a positive way forward in a future amongst many people in our community right now. We have to acknowledge that. In addition to the fact that we have seen, this proliferation of guns that we talked about earlier, and a challenge with the police and community, all those things. And so we're really focused on trying to address violence in a comprehensive way. We know that we can do this. After our record homicide rate back in 2017, we put together our comprehensive neighborhood safety strategy and brought homicides down dramatically in 18 and 19. I will tell you, this violence is different. And that's why we've got renowned criminologist David Kennedy coming in to help us study and understand. But this is as much about prevention and intervention as it is about policing our way out of it. Because we got families and young people in crisis.
I would agree. Go ahead, President Hardin.
No. The mayor hit every point. There is no one solution. And to the point, we have to acknowledge that this last year, these last 9 months, and probably a couple more months will be the hardest 12 months that any of us will ever live through. These challenges are unprecedented. Our hands are tied in many ways in terms of our traditional ways of policing and keeping communities safe. And so the things that the mayor listed are all parts of a comprehensive strategy, but it takes all of us. It is unacceptable. No one is condoning any of it, but it is extremely complex, and it's not just a Columbus issue. We accept responsibility. We are the leaders of this city, but this is not just a Columbus issue. I talk to all of my peers in all the top 20 cities around the country. They have seen their highest spikes too. So that means that this is not something, this is bigger. And that's why I do lay a lot of this at just the stress and economic issues that came out of this pandemic, and then the trust factors that this country is going through in terms of policing. But we can handle all of that. We're going to handle all of that. We have plans in place. We need the public to be engaged, and we look forward to working with the community and to Stephanie, to organizations like the Urban League, as we have other intervention methods to keep folks safe.
Well, thank you to the both of you for sharing, and I think this is what we wanted to be able to get out to our community. We need to have more of these opportunities for our community to hear exactly what's going on, because I think so many times our community doesn't really understand the work that you all are doing, and that, things don't happen overnight, but there are strategies in place. And especially, I appreciate both of you talking about, especially with our young people and the violence that's going on. This isn't just it's happening. This pandemic has exacerbated this. We don't have places for them to go. They don't have outlets in order for them to be productive. We know that sometimes home situations are not what they should be, at no fault to anyone. And I appreciate that. Yes, you brought in this person, that criminologist, is going to help us to really dissect what is going on in our community, so that we can continue to put programming in place, so that we can make sure that our families are safe, they're sustainable, that they're productive. And this is about economics. We all know this is about jobs. This is about being able to feed your family, about housing. So thank you for your continued work and leadership, and your courage to lead through these difficult times. I know a lot of times everybody's beating you up every day. I think I might beat you up some too sometimes. you know that it's in love, and because we're all passionate about this city. So thank you to both of you, and know that we are here to support your work. So thank you. Divine, who we got next?
Thank you, guys. Yes, moving forward, first of all, this is amazing, the information that we are getting right now. And thank you so much once again, Stephanie Hightower, for you and the Columbus Urban League putting this together. But we would be remiss if we don't talk to our good friend, Commissioner Kevin Boyce. We're going to welcome him to the forum. Hello there.
I've had the worst time signing on, and I can barely hear, but I can hear you guys now. And so I can't move. I know I'm at a bad angle, but this is the angle that's working, so I'm not moving.
It works for us, man. Yeah. We are okay with it.
Well, thank you. Is it President Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner President Boyce?
You know what? You can call me Your Honor. That's you just call me Your Honor, and I'm good with that.
I got you. So Your Honor, sir, I'm gonna put the stuff there.
Your Highness.
You
Your Honor, Your Highness, at all. I respond to all those things. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on just being elected to the presidency seat for the county commissioners. You've been listening to the conversations today. Commissioner Boyce, you are one of our, up and coming, leaders. Not up and coming, you've been around for a while, but just being the first African-American county commissioner, and all of the things that are going on with safety. And especially the assault on our democracy yesterday, and this community and this county feeling safe, what would be some of your perspectives to share with everyone today to add to what the mayor and President Hardin talked about, as well as John Gregory, about safety, and especially safety for Black men, and why their vote counts and matters to make sure that they stay safe?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Divine and Stephanie, for your leadership and being and manifesting this voice in this conversation. I think part of our healing and growth is rooted in these kind of conversations. let me just begin with, I think at the heart of what frustrates me about 2020 and even where we are today and what we saw yesterday is this conversation and denial about race in America. And at the heart of all of this, we are seeing, actually, I describe it a different way. We have been exposed to just the depth that we have to grow around this conversation of race. And here's my best example of this. CNN has a story on their front page right now that you can see where it's a white reporter that does it, but she shows the illustration of how the response was around the Capitol after the George Floyd death, where you see the National Guard in full riot gear, in full war battle mode, versus what you saw yesterday. And I think that is the discussion that needs to take place. And that's rooted in race, because again, when it's African American folks, there is just a generally different response. And this is the opportunity that we have as a nation to really peel back the layers and grow from our own weaknesses. And so to me, what I saw yesterday, and again, I think Mayor Ginther and President Hardin and John Gregory, I think they all said it very well. We can talk at this ad nauseum, but at the heart of this entire thing is a time where we can get at this conversation around race. And that's really what I feel like we've been able to do at the county level. When we declared racism as a public health crisis, yes, we were zeroed in on the pandemic. Yes, we were zeroed in on, infant mortality and opiate overdoses and all of those things. But the real reality about racism as a public health crisis, as it transcends nearly every category that you can think of in measuring the quality of life. And so until we're ready to have these conversations, then invest in the action to change some of these things, then I think we're just going to always be circling around the wagons at the same point we're at today. We're going to be mad, frustrated, exhausted, and angry about the same damn conversations we've been having since the beginning of time, And so, but to see how that played out yesterday and see the reaction of the law. I mean, you saw situations where the officer just kind of looked at them as they ran on into, the cell. You have people sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk and climbing the wall and stuff. And you talk about a disruptive force in this conversation. And the reality is, while this stuff has always existed, to me, this is my humble opinion, to me, since the beginning of the Obama era, you have just seen a heightened stress around this with certain groups. And so it's, this is where we are today, and so it's unfortunate, but again, this is why we declare racism as a public health crisis. It's why we've invested so much time, resources, and literally committed millions of dollars to trying to peel back the layers for Franklin County as an institution and as a community.
Very well said. The violence has come to a feverish pitch when you really think about it. We start 2021 just like any other new year, where we started optimistic and, we got all these good feelings about how this year is going to go down. But the stark reality is we are not out of the water quite yet. Hence the events that happened on yesterday. So the violence has gotten so out of hand that we're not really even talking about the virus too much anymore. Mm-hmm. We also have the inauguration coming up in a couple of days. Do you predict or anticipate more violence between now and that time, or possibly on that date, with tensions being so high?
Well, I predict that the messaging that's coming forth from it is going to continue, and the actions that these folks take is going to continue. And part of the reason why it's going to continue is because the way it was responded to, it almost was an encouraging environment, quite frankly, and when the president of that, I think it was President Hardin that said this, when the egregious act of the president, I mean, that borderline on treason, when the president sort of signals this out and sort of promotes this activity to occur, and in some ways, it's an unbelievable weak stage that we are in as a country. And so to answer your question, Yvonne, while I can't predict more violence, I predict that this same type of reaction is going to be allowed to happen because we allowed it to happen there yesterday.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and someone just, put in a comment. This is about fear. At the heart of all of this is fear, and how to overcome fear on either side. I think it's, I want to go back to the point that you made about, racism, being a public health crisis. And I just appreciate the leadership that you and the other commissioners took on this, because there's racism also in the law enforcement side of it, big time, that needs to be addressed. And you've just hit the nail on the head that, you look at the stark contrast of what happened after George Floyd passed, and then knowing that, these Trump protesters were coming and there was nothing absolutely done. And then, the ironic part of this, President Boyce, is the fact that then it's the Black folks who have to go in there and clean up the place and redo everything. So from a perspective of our democracy, and I know you are a great patriot and you've been in the thick of being an elected official for a long time, what is the message we want to send to the Black community that when it's time to vote again, why everything that's happened now, why it's so important that now, if anything, we have to hunker down and we got to get to the polls, and that why they have to vote?
You know what? I think it was John Gregory that mentioned earlier being in the barbershops, and obviously I try to make it I need to make it there now, but I try to make it there on a regular basis. And the conversations are always interesting because you get the full range and spectrum of the conversation, from the ultra conservative to the ultra liberal and everything in between. And, I think Black folks understand our value in the electoral process. I think we understand the impact that we can have, and we see it in important elections like the one that just played out. We see it in important elections like the one that just played out in Georgia.
That's right.
And we see it in some of the policy changes that are coming forward. But it's still this broader conversation of the quality of life for African Americans, where that can be a priority in our day. We still, in terms of voting and being a part of the electoral process, we still have to talk about wealth distribution in America. We still have to talk about hiring practices in America. We still have to talk about the ability for people who have to access public school systems to be highly educated so they can compete and go to some of the great higher education institutions, and access to healthcare and mental health care and all the things that go in between. Because until we can get at those resources being equally distributed, equally accessible, then we're always going to be in a situation where I can remember on election day talking to a constituent of mine who's a single mom. I think she has 2 or 3 kids. And she was talking about I said, did you vote today? And she said, oh, I got to get off work. I still got to pick the kids up. I still got to go. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I was like, well, that's what early vote is for. She was like, yeah, but even on all those days of early vote, I got the same schedule. I got the same stuff. And so part of it is this, and that's what we're trying to do at the county with this conversation around poverty. We use the term poverty, but embedded in that is really about the quality of life for everybody. If we could raise the bar so that people can have the ability to go vote on election day, they can have the time to read up on candidates and be engaged more in media. But if you're a single mom with 3 kids and you hustling from job to school to whatever, then your priority breakdown, sometimes the vote can be the loser in that process. Being able to participate, it's getting better. But again, I'm just saying to your question, Stephanie, I think Black people fundamentally understand the value and importance of voting. And I think there's a belief in it, no matter how you vote. But until we address these broader issues, it's always going to be something where, we gotta balance. I do it myself, I early voted this year. I rarely early voted this year because I just had a couple other things going on. I was like, election day is going to be tough. Let me just go ahead and get this vote in. And so, but that's what our conversations around poverty, which is embedded in that, is wealth distribution, mental health care access to quality health care, access to good education, access to affordable quality housing, and that's why we're really trying to zero in on these things, because if we can sort of level that playing field, then we think the other things sort of fall into place too.
Yeah, I and thank you for that, because you are spot on. Folks do want to do the right thing, but to your point, if I can't get off work, if my job puts me in a different place, but I'm hoping that as, we move towards, your presidency and leadership over the next year and other things that are going on, that we as a community can continue to have these kind of conversations, talk about why it's important for people to vote. How do we get people in programs like we have at the Urban League with financial literacy and how to do home ownership and those kind of things and wealth building for our community? Because once we do, as you said, move down that track, then it gives people more opportunities for access to do the kinds of things they need to pay attention to voting and to support leaders like you to continue to be in those seats so that our community, and not that you just serve the Black community, we know you serve the entire county, but that everybody has somebody that's looking at that lens of racism when they're putting policies and procedures in place. So we just appreciate you taking your time today. Again, know you're busy. Yesterday was such a distraction and we were all devastated. And we knew that Black folks were going to be weary and continue to be frustrated, as you said. And we wanted to make sure they had an opportunity to hear from leaders like you about the importance of why they're important, why your work is important, why they need to support your work so that we can make sure that our community stays safe.
Absolutely.
You're so right. And I'll just say one, you're right. Y'all need to support leaders like me, dumb kids. But the one thing I will say is it's been a change of philosophy. The one thing I want to point out is it's why during the pandemic, when we were able to distribute some of those dollars to the Urban League to help minority Black-owned businesses make it. That's a change in philosophy than how we've done our work in the past. And it's because we're understanding that wealth distribution, economic development is a core part of quality of life. And if you can give other communities access like other communities have had, then you can maybe begin to raise that tide so that these all boats can be lifted.
Absolutely. And lastly, Commissioner Boyce, I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of chatter about the extremist groups and the things that they're doing and that they've been activated and, things may get more violent in the near future. On top of that, we still have our issues that we have with law enforcement. So what advice would you give to the community right now as far as staying safe? You could be walking to your car like the lady last night that got carjacked by the 3 female teenagers. I mean, it could be simple stuff. What advice would you give to someone just to stay safe right now?
When I played high school football, the coaches used to always tell you, keep your head on a swivel. So you'd be out on the football field, and what they meant by keep your head on a swivel, you spin around. You don't want to get blindsided by somebody because you're looking this way at the ball, and then you get blindsided by someone. So they say, keep your head on a swivel, look around. That's my advice to folks. Keep your head on a swivel, pay attention to the details of things going on in the community, and don't put yourself in situations, that make you vulnerable. If you can go somewhere with somebody, whether it's going to the car, to the store, whatever, then you should do that. And don't, try to, I was saying this to a friend the other day, be thoughtful. A female friend, I said, you have to be thoughtful about vulnerable places that create opportunities for those looking for to do some things. You gotta be careful. So if you gotta walk to your car, if you're at work and you get off and it's 8 o'clock and you gotta walk 2 blocks to your car, maybe get somebody to take you. Maybe catch an Uber to your car. Just be thoughtful about that and try to prevent those circumstance situations. But overall, pay attention to what's going on around you.
I have to remember that. Keep my head on the swivel.
Keep it on swivel. And that transfers in life too. It just in general, in work, all of that. That's my philosophy for 20. To keep your head on a swivel.
Okay, we're gonna get you some business cards made with that motto on it. Okay, keep your head on a swivel. We want to thank you for joining us today, and congratulations once again on your election as Commission President, Your Highness.
Again, Your Honor is fine. It's you don't have to. Your Highness is too formal, So Your Honor.
Thank you so much for your time and attention today. And Stephanie Hightower, this has been a good one for the books. Very informative. Thank you again, you and the Columbus Urban League, for coming together with Radio One. And I've been honored to host this with you. We appreciate you.
No, thank you again. You're a great just communications community partner. We appreciate you. You're just such a pro. And so thank you again for allowing us to be a part of educating our community in light of the unfortunate circumstances that happened at the Capitol and some circumstances here locally. But we want to make sure our community knows that we have their back, and that we want to make sure you stay safe. And even in this pandemic, most of us probably aren't out anyway. But as Commissioner Boyce said, let's keep our head on that swivel. Let's make sure that we know this isn't our fight, but that we do want to make sure that we stay safe in the Black community. And John Gregory with the mental health line for Black men, please take advantage of that if you are feeling frustrated and you need an outlet. That African American Men hotline number is really important, and we hope that individuals will consider using it.
Yes, we had some great panelists. Thank you to all of the panelists that participated today. John Gregory, the CEO of the National Center for Urban Solutions. He has that Real Talk hotline. Also to Mayor Ginther and Council President Shannon Hardin for joining us. And of course, Commissioner Kevin Boyce. And last but definitely not least, thank you so much to the Columbus Urban League and to you, Stephanie Hightower, the president. I appreciate you. Girl power.
Absolutely. Thank you, Divine.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm your CJ Divine Martino with Magic 95.5 and Radio 1.